Growing up in a remote Texas town surrounded by endless fields and starry skies, my life was a patchwork of ordinary days, laced with moments that would eventually steer me toward my destiny. I spent countless afternoons exploring the dusty trails, around our family's small ranch, letting my imagination transform the mundane into grand adventures. My father, a steadfast Air Force veteran, would often find me perched on the rusted remains of an old tractor, daydreaming of distant places and heroic deeds. He'd chuckle, ruffle my hair, and remind me that real courage often looks nothing like the stories. When I was 12, tragedy struck our family. A barn fire claimed not just our livestock, but my father's cherished Air Force memorabilia. Watching him sift through the ashes in silence, I saw for the first time the weight of loss on a man who had always seemed invincible. That moment became a turning point for me, awakening a resolve to build something that flames couldn't destroy. A legacy, rooted in resilience and honor. My teenage years brought unexpected lessons in leadership. After my mother fell ill, I stepped in to manage the household alongside my younger siblings. It was during these years that I learned the value of patience and the strength found in small acts of service while my peers were chasing fleeting dreams. I was learning what it meant to shoulder responsibility, not out of choice, but necessity. An encounter at a local Veterans Day parade solidified my path. I met Captain Charles Donnelly, a decorated pilot who spoke with the kind of authenticity that commands attention. His stories of survival and camaraderie weren't just inspiring, they were transformative. That night, I resolved to follow in his footsteps, though the road ahead was still uncertain. When the time came to enlist, I hesitated, not out of fear, but out of a need to be sure. The memory of my father's quiet pride and my mother's unwavering faith in me were what finally propelled me forward. They had built a foundation of values that I could no longer ignore, and I knew the Air Force was where I could honor them both. My early days in basic training felt like stepping into another world. The discipline, the rigor, and the relentless pace tested my limits in ways I hadn't anticipated, but the bonds I formed during those grueling weeks turned strangers into family. One of those bonds was with Tom Cassini, who would become not just a teammate, but a brother. Together, we'd face challenges that no training could fully prepare us for, forging a partnership that would shape the trajectory of my life. My name is Bill Watson. I'm a 26-year-old technical sergeant in the United States Air Force, currently stationed in Afghanistan. My duties vary, but I primarily serve as either a sniper or a spotter, forming a close-knit team with my trusted companion and colleague, Staff Sergeant Tom Cassini. The Air Force became my path immediately after high school, a decision deeply influenced by my family's military legacy. My father devoted over 2 decades to service before settling into civilian life in Central Texas. My grandparents, both veterans of the Air Force, also chose to retire nearby. Even my great-grandfather contributed to this lineage as a member of the Army Air Corps during World War II. This heritage has played a profound role in defining who I am today. I met my wife, Mary, while attending school in Mississippi. Both of her parents, Sam and Misty, are retired Air Force members who recently settled in Central Florida. We were lucky to be stationed at Patrick Air Force Base near Melbourne, where her parents could lend a hand when our son Sean was born 3 years ago. To ensure Sean's future, I started a small cleaning business that initially serviced our church. Over time, the business expanded to include contracts for base housing inspections, a strip mall, and a 3-story office building. The company now employs about a dozen people, many with military ties. Mary handled the scheduling and accounting while I focused on sales and operations. For most of my 8 years in the Air Force, I worked as an avionics systems technician. However, when the Air Force sought volunteers for sniper training, I applied, qualifying due to my expert marksman scores. The promise of additional hazardous duty pay and the challenge of the role appealed to me, and Mary supported the decision. I trained alongside Marine and Army snipers in Georgia, where I met Tom, another Air Force airman. We formed an Air Force exclusive sniper team and finished our training as top performers. Tom, previously stationed at McGuire Air Force Base in New Jersey, transferred to Patrick AFB just before our 18-month deployment to Afghanistan. 8 months in, we'd completed numerous missions together, though I kept in touch with Mary, Sean, and our families through phone calls and Skype. The distance never felt easy. During one Skype call with Mary, I noticed a shadow moving in the background. Assuming it was Sean, I asked about it, but she said he was staying with her parents for the week. She speculated it might have been someone from the cleaning team stopping by. It was mid-afternoon in Florida, so I didn't think much of it. The following day, my phone rang. It was my friend Don Sterling, who sometimes helped out with the business. His voice was tight with tension. "Bill," he said hesitantly, "I hate to tell you this, but Mary's cheating on you." I froze, struggling to process his words. "You're kidding, right?" "I wish I were," Don said, his tone heavy with regret. "Yesterday I stopped by your house to check on Mary and see if she needed anything. Her car was in the driveway, but when I knocked, no one answered. The door was unlocked, so I stepped inside. That's when I saw her in the kitchen with Dick Smothers. Let's just say neither of them was dressed for company." His words hit me like a punch to the gut. I forced myself to ask, "Don, are you absolutely sure about this?" "I'm sure, Bill." "I'm so sorry, man," he said, his voice filled with sympathy. "But you need to stay alert. If there's more going on, you'll want proof. And one more thing, make sure Sean's actually at her parents' place." I swallowed hard. "There is a law office in the building. We clean Stein and Green, right? Maybe I should start there." "Good idea," Don said. "I've got your back, but keep this quiet for now. Just between us and the lawyer." "Thanks, Don, I appreciate it." After hanging up, I sat there in stunned silence, my mind spinning. 6 years of marriage. And now this. Had the distance pushed her to this? I couldn't make sense of it. Determined to act, I went to the base's headquarters building and asked to speak with someone who could help. A desk sergeant directed me to an office where I met Colonel Lane. After a firm handshake, he gestured for me to sit. "Take your time, Sergeant Watson," he said. "Tell me what's going on." I spilled everything, Don's call, the betrayal, and my uncertainty about what to do next. As I finished, my hands were shaking and I struggled to hold back tears. The colonel listened intently, jotting down notes as I spoke. When I was done, he leaned back, giving me a moment to collect myself. Then he picked up the phone. "Vic, it's Charlie. I've got a situation here. Can you come to my office?" "No, not that. Yes, the other matter. Also, see if you can track down USAF Staff Sergeant Tom Cassini. Thanks, Vic." After hanging up, he turned to me. "Help is on the way. Just sit tight. You're not alone in this, Bill." I stood uneasy. "I don't want to take up your office. I can wait outside." "Nonsense," he said firmly. "I'm here for situations like this. The pain you're feeling is overwhelming, but I promise it will get better. It takes time, a lot of it, but you'll come out the other side." He leaned forward, his tone soft but resolute. 10 years ago, I went through something similar. It nearly broke me. For 5 years, I couldn't see a way forward. At my lowest point, I thought about giving up entirely, but someone pulled me back from the brink. That kindness saved me, and now I do the same for others. "You're not alone, Bill. We'll get you through this." His words settled over me like a heavy blanket. He'd survived, so maybe I could too, but it still felt impossible. I thought of Sean. He deserved better than this. I had to make it through for him. Mary, though, she'd never be near him again. Her betrayal wasn't just against me, it was against our family. If she'd cheated once, who's to say it hadn't happened before, or wouldn't again? I needed answers, but wasn't sure I could handle the truth. If this had been going on for years, I didn't trust myself not to snap. My thoughts turned to her parents. Did they know? I doubted it. They'd always treated me like family, but I'd have to tread carefully if I brought them into this. A soft knock interrupted my spiraling thoughts. Father Vittorio Barducci entered, followed by Tom. Tom came straight to me, kneeling beside my chair and wrapping me in a firm hug. "I heard what happened," he said. "Buddy, you have to hang on. We need you, and Sean needs you even more. You can't let her take him. Stay strong for him." I shook my head, unable to speak. "Dig deep, Bill," Tom said firmly. "You've got to push through this. I'll help. And so will Father Vic. You're not alone." "I know, Tom," I replied. "My buddy Don is keeping tabs back home. He's already found proof. Caught Mary with one guy in our kitchen, and he thinks there might be more. He's also contacting a lawyer to get things started." I sighed. "Sorry for breaking down like that, but it hit me hard talking to the colonel. Let's head back to the tent. Maybe I can get some sleep." "We've probably got a mission coming up," Tom said. "Don't worry about that," the colonel interrupted. "I'll adjust the rotation or even arrange emergency leave for you to deal with this." "Who's Don?" the colonel asked. "Don Sterling, a close friend. He's reaching out to Stein and Green, a law firm near Indian Harbor Beach. My cleaning company handles their office cleaning," I explained. The colonel looked at me with a curious expression. "You own a cleaning business?" he asked. I nodded. "Yes, my wife and I run it together, though I'm the sole owner on paper. She takes care of the scheduling and bookkeeping while I handle sales and operations." He gave a thoughtful nod. "That's good to know. Is the business properly registered?" "Absolutely," I replied. "Everything is legitimate. I worked with the base legal office to file all the necessary paperwork. We pay our taxes, and I manage payroll responsibly." "Good," the colonel said firmly. "I'll contact Don to get the lawyer's details and oversee things until your new attorney is fully involved. For now, head back to your tent. I'll notify your commanding officer that you'll need some time off." "Thank you, Colonel," I said. "A couple of days to sort myself out would help. After that, I think I'll need a mission to blow off some steam. Shooting calms me down." "Colonel," Tom added, "he's not kidding. We're like new people after missions. Major Kelly even says we're his most dependable team, tense during the briefing, but focused and effective in the field." "Are you both snipers?" Father Vic asked. "Yes," Tom answered. "We alternate between shooting and spotting. We don't care about individual stats. It's about teamwork. Together, we've got 54 confirmed eliminations and 23 possibles. The CEO trusts us with tough missions because he knows we'll get the job done." "Commendable," Father Vic said. "One spirit and two bodies. You really are a team." "Absolutely," the colonel agreed. When Tom came in, his first thought was for Bill. They share the burden and the glory equally. That's why they excel. "It's refreshing to see this kind of loyalty," Father Vic said. "It's rare these days, but it's inspiring to witness." Colonel Lane jotted down Don's number before Tom and I left his office, while he and Father Bartucci continued their conversation. Tom helped me back to our tent. I took a couple of aspirin, lay down, and was out cold. I woke around 10:15 a.m. after sleeping. Over 34 hours straight, the sunlight filtering through the tent walls confirmed it was daytime. Tom was by my side as soon as I stirred. "Feeling better?" he asked. "Starving," I replied. "Let me hit the latrine and we'll grab chow." "You've been out since Tuesday night," Tom said. "It's Thursday now. You must have needed the rest. You even slept longer than after Mission 27 when we were up for 122 hours. "I can't believe I was out that long," I said. "Guess I needed it." "What's this about phone calls?" "You got a few interesting ones while you were out," Tom said. "The colonel's been busy too. Seems like he's been making calls to Florida. He wants to meet us tonight at 12:30. After a quick cleanup and a change of uniform, we made our way to the chow hall. On the way, a few of my tent mates couldn't resist teasing me with Sleeping Beauty jokes. Once inside, we bumped into Sergeant Lillian Restor from the JAG office. "Well, well, back among the living," she said with a smile. "Feeling better? You looked rough the other night, but I'd say that long nap did you. Good." I returned her smile. "Thanks, Sergeant Restor." It felt like a system reboot, exactly what my body and mind needed. She nodded approvingly. "You're handling things better than most would. Let me guess, a Dear John over Skype. It happens a lot, especially with the time difference. The Colonel's great at dealing with these situations, which is why he works late." "Thanks for checking in," I replied. "Care to join us for lunch?" She hesitated, then shook her head. "I'd love to, but I think Tom has some things to discuss with you. How about dinner at 6 instead?" "I'll bring my friend Amy along too." Tom smirked. "Why bring a friend?" Lillian grinned. "So you'll have someone to talk to while I chat with Bill. See you tonight, flyboys." As she walked off, I turned to Tom. "Was she flirting, or am I imagining it?" "Oh, she's definitely flirting," Tom said with a chuckle. "And I'm curious about her friend Amy, but first, let's eat. Sounds like you're starving." I devoured 2 slices of meatloaf, 3 of roast beef, a double serving of mashed potatoes with gravy, 4 vegetable bowls, 2 slices of apple pie, and a cup of ice cream. While I ate, Tom updated me. Don had called twice, and the lawyer had called once. Tom had the lawyer speak with the Colonel. Don had also sent more photos, this time of Mary with a captain we cleaned for and another guy who occasionally worked for us. It strengthened my case for custody of Sean, but fueled my anger even more. Still, I stayed calm. It just confirmed Mary's true character. After eating, Tom and I worked out at the gym before heading back to the tent for a nap. I wanted to be rested for dinner in the late-night meeting with the Colonel. At 12:30 a.m., I showered, dressed, and we went to the Chow Hall. There we met Sergeant Restor and a young Marine Corporal, Amy Stevens. After introductions, we grabbed food and sat at the same table as earlier. Tom hit it off with Amy instantly. Both were from upstate New York, raised about 50 miles apart. Lillian and I talked about our lives, families, and goals. She was from near Lexington, KY, while I grew up near Austin, TX. I shared stories about Mary, Sean, and our life before deployment, but kept my current troubles to myself. Before I knew it, 3 hours had passed. We said goodnight, promising to meet again for meals or maybe a movie. Tom and I headed to the communications tent so I could Skype Mary. It was mid-morning back home, so she should have been working on payroll. Mary answered quickly, looking polished except for a patch of messy hair in the back. We chatted as usual, with her sweetly saying how much she missed me. Tom and I kept an eye on the background for anything suspicious near the end of the call. Tom spotted a faint shadow on the wall behind Mary. It looked like a man's silhouette, but the lighting made it unclear. I frowned and Mary noticed. "Bill, what's wrong?" she asked. "I thought I saw something behind you," I said. "Maybe it was just a reflection from outside." Mary reassured me with loving words, saying how much she missed my arms around her. But as she spoke, the shadow in the background exaggerated her words in a mocking way when the call ended. The audio lingered briefly, and I heard Mary laughing with a man before the line cut off. Tom and I couldn't help but laugh at the absurdity of it. Mary's deceit was painfully clear. At that moment, I made a decision. She would never see Sean again. As soon as I got the news, I called my mom. "Mom, I need you and Dad to go to Florida and get Sean. Tell Mary you want to spend time with him. She's cheating on me, and if Sean stays with the Wilsons, she'll try to see him. Once she's served, she might even try to take him away." There was a sharp intake of breath on the other end. "She's what?" "Of course we'll go. But why now?" "I just found out Tuesday," I explained. "Don. Sterling. You remember him and Marie walked in on her with a guy in our kitchen. He even took a picture. The divorce is already in motion. Sean's staying with Sam and Misty this week, but Mary will probably get him this weekend. I don't want him around her. I'd like to think she wouldn't bring men over when he's home, but I can't take that chance. We'll leave as soon as we can, Mom assured me. I'll call Misty to see if we can stay there for now. Are you coming back soon? Or will you handle this remotely? I'm not sure yet, I said. I've got a meeting with my lawyer tonight. He's been through something similar, and Tom's been a huge help, too. Is Tom there now? She asked. Let me say something to him. Tom pulled up a chair next to me and leaned toward the phone. Hi, Mom, he said warmly. I hope it's okay I call you that. My mom doesn't have a computer with a camera, so I rarely get to see her. Of course, Tom, she replied with a chuckle. You're helping Bill, and that makes you family. Send me your mom's address and I'll send her a webcam so you can talk face to face. Thanks. But she'd probably be embarrassed, Tom said. Since Dad passed, I think she's been seeing someone but hasn't told me. I should write her a letter and let her know I'd be happy if she's found someone. You absolutely should, Mom encouraged him. Sometimes parents forget their kids grow into adults. Now I'll get your dad moving toward Florida, Bill. We'll get through this. Thanks, Mom. Love you. Be careful on your trip. Are you flying or driving? We'll decide after talking with Sam and Misty, she said. And don't worry, we won't mention Mary's cheating, but we might feel them out on their thoughts about infidelity. We'll keep you updated. Love you too, Mom. Bye. After the call, Tom looked at me and said, Man, your mom is cool, but I bet she's furious. When do you usually call your in-laws? You probably want to see Sean. Thanks, Tom, I replied, needing a moment to gather myself. Let me take a moment to pull myself together. Could you grab us a beer? You got it, he said, leaving the room. I called the Wilson home. Misty answered after a few rings. Hey, Bill, want me to set up Skype so you can talk to Sean? That'd be great. I haven't had a chance to talk to him this week. After we hung up, I noticed she was online again, so I decided to call her on Skype. Hey, Mom, you look fantastic. I hope Sean hasn't been giving you and Dad too much trouble this week. Oh, Bill, don't be silly, she said with a laugh. Sean's a joy to have around. Honestly, sometimes I wish you had a dozen more just like him. Just then, Sean ran into the room, his little arms outstretched as he climbed onto Misty's lap. He beamed at the screen. Hi, Daddy. I miss you so much. When are you coming home? Mommy says she misses you too. Hey, buddy, I said, my heart swelling at the sight of him. I miss you too. I'm not sure when I'll be back, but it might be soon. Maybe next month. There's a chance we'll get a break in the middle of the tour, but it depends on where we're stationed and what's going on. Sean's face lit up. Oh, that's great, Daddy. I miss you a lot. I miss you too, pal, I said warmly. Have you been behaving for Grandma and Grandpa? I've been really good, Daddy. Right, Grandma? Sean turned to my mom for confirmation. She smiled and ruffled his hair. Yes, Sean, you've been wonderful. We're proud of you. Then she shifted her attention to me. How about you, Bill? Everything okay over there? You look tired. Yeah, Mom, everything's fine, I assured her. Just busy. I might not be able to call for a little while, so make sure Sean keeps being a good boy and helps Mommy out, okay? Okay, Daddy, I'll help Mommy, Sean promised eagerly. Then his gaze wandered toward the door. Can I go play now? Of course, buddy, I said with a smile. I love you. As I spoke, I felt tears sliding down my cheeks. Misty noticed and gently helped Sean down from her lap. Before running out of the room, he turned back to, Give me one last look. I love you too, Daddy. Come home soon. Watching him disappear, I closed my eyes and whispered a silent prayer. Please, God, protect my boy. Keep him safe from damage and away from her manipulative ways. Just let her stay out of our lives. When I opened my eyes, Misty was staring at me, her expression serious. Bill, something's going on. I can see it in your face. What's wrong? Are you in trouble or about to do something dangerous? Don't think we're clueless about what's happening over there, so spill it. What's really going on? I took a deep breath. Misty, I swear I can't talk about it yet, but changes are coming and you'll know soon enough. Trying to lighten the mood, I added. Oh, and by the way, I spoke to Mom earlier. She and Dad are planning a surprise visit to see you and the kids. They want to take Sean to Disney World. You could go too. Doesn't that sound fun? Her eyebrows shot up in suspicion. Bill, I know you too well. What aren't you telling me? Listen, I said carefully. I promise I'll explain everything when I can. Maybe next week or the week after. For now, please just trust me. She folded her arms, clearly unconvinced. Well, I might just dig around a little. Maybe one of my friends knows what you're up to. Misty, please don't, I pleaded. This has to stay under wraps, especially from Mary. I mean it. She can't know anything. Honestly, I wish you didn't even know this much. I'm begging you. Let it go for now, please. She stared at me for a long moment before reluctantly nodding. Fine, but I want to answer soon. Got it. Yes, ma'am, I said, trying to sound lighthearted. I swear you'll know everything as soon as I can share it. I love you all so much. Just wait a little longer, all right, she said softly. But you better tell me soon. We love you too, Bill. The longer you wait, the more I'll worry. I promise I'll explain everything when the time's right, I assured her. I love you guys more than you know, but I've got to go now. Take care. Bye. I ended the call and sat there, wiping away more tears. I wanted to trust her completely, but I couldn't. Not until I could talk to her face to face or until Mary was officially served, whichever came first. Tom walked in, handing me a beer. Here you go. Let's head back to the tent and unwind. We spent the next couple of hours sipping our beers in silence, each lost in our own thoughts. I told him about my conversation with Misty, and he guessed she might be worried about a mission or me coming home. Either way, we couldn't figure out what she thought she knew. When it was time to eat, we made our way to the chow hall and joined Lillian and Amy. We ate, chatted for a bit, and then said our goodbyes. The women headed off for their midnight to 8 a.m. shift, and Tom and I walked to headquarters to meet with Colonel Lane. At the JAG office, I greeted the receptionist. Good evening, Sergeant Restore. We have a 12:30 appointment with Colonel Lane. She gave us a polite smile. He's expecting you. One moment, please. She disappeared down a hallway and returned a few minutes later. The Colonel is ready for you now. Follow me. Tom and I stepped into the Colonel's office and took the 2 chairs in front of his desk. He was on a call but looked ready to wrap it up. We sat quietly, waiting until he finished. After hanging up, he turned to us with a welcoming smile. Sergeants Watson and Cassini, good to see you again, he began warmly. I've got good news, even better news and fantastic news for you both. Let's start with the good news. Your lawyer in Florida, Walter Gronblatt, has agreed to handle your divorce. Case pro bono. He specializes in civil cases, while Ernest Stein focuses on criminal law, so you're in excellent hands. From the evidence gathered so far, it's clear that infidelity are undeniable, which should make this an uncontested divorce. Especially since you're serving overseas, that fact alone carries significant weight with the court. The Colonel leaned forward, his tone steady and confident. Now on to the even better news. Your company isn't directly tied to the divorce. While your wife may have a claim to part of it, her position is weak since the divorce stems from her actions, and she isn't listed as an officer of the business. Her claim is flimsy at best. Florida isn't a community property state, but it does account for marital and non-marital assets. Because you started the company during the marriage, the judge may grant her a monetary settlement for her contributions as an employee. But that's about it. How are the company finances set up? Does she receive a salary or just a share of the profits? Colonel Lane, I explained, we both draw salaries from the business. Any profits are deposited into a trust fund for our son's college education. A portion is set aside for maintenance, but the rest goes into the trust. Why do you ask? The Colonel's eyes lit up with approval. That's brilliant. Either you're a financial genius or you have a smart advisor. With everything structured that way, the assets are untouchable. They belong to your son and the trust's executor. Who oversees the trust? You, your wife, or someone else? It's managed by his godfather. Don Sterling, Tom replied. If something happens to us, Don takes over the company, custody of Sean and the estate. Well done, the colonel said, clearly impressed. And Mary probably doesn't even remember how the trust is set up, does she? Doubtful. We can make deposits, but no one can withdraw funds until Sean turns 18, I explained. The colonel grinned. Your father was a genius for setting this up. The trust is ironclad. Only the executor or a parent can access the funds, and even then, only for Sean's education. Actually, I added, it's for all our children. My dad made sure the trust covered any children from the marriage of Bill and Mary Watson. Tom frowned. Wait, does that mean if Mary had a child with someone else, they wouldn't be included in the trust? Correct, I replied, as long as we can prove the child isn't mine. Through DNA testing. A chilling thought hit me. My voice cracked as I said, Oh God, what if Sean isn't mine? I can't even. My words broke off as emotion overwhelmed me. The colonel acted quickly, grabbing his phone and dialing a number. Walter, it's Charles Lane. Is there any way we can get a DNA test for Sean? Yes, saliva will work. Check with the hospital where he was born. Some places routinely collect that information now. And do you have the trust documents? Great. Review them thoroughly. From what I'm hearing, everything looks rock solid also. Bill mentioned that the profits from the business go directly into the trust. Smart setup, huh? Okay, keep me updated. Thanks. Goodbye. He hung up and turned back to me. Bill, the more I learn about your situation, the more impressed I am. Now for the great news. You two are heading out on a mission tomorrow night. It should only last 3 or 4 days, and after that you'll have some time to decompress before heading home for 15 days of leave. If you want, I can arrange for Tom to take leave with you. You two seem to work well as a team, Colonel, I began. As much as I'd like Tom to come with me, I don't think it's fair to him. Plus, Don will be there to support me. Don and I have been close since basic training, almost like brothers, but Tom and I have a bond that's more like twins. Hard to explain, but anyone who sees us can tell. The colonel nodded. So, Tom, what's your call? Are you staying or going? Tom spoke up. Sir, I'd like to stay. I met someone yesterday, Amy, and we hit it off. I don't know where it'll lead, but I don't want to lose the chance to find out. Bill, I hope you understand. I smiled. Tom, I'd never want to ruin your shot at something real with Amy. Stay here. I hope you have good news to share when I get back. The colonel cleared his throat, cutting into the conversation. Before I forget, I need you both to sign this fax. Bill, sign where indicated. And Tom, you'll sign as the witness. I'll send this to Walter so he can start the process of serving Mary. Actually, I said, holding up a hand, can we hold off on serving her until I get home? I'd like to hand her the papers myself, maybe 15 minutes after I walk through the door. Tom burst out laughing. That's cold, Bill, but I'd pay good money to see her face when she reads them. The colonel chuckled as well. I have to admit it's cold, but I like it. If you get a picture of her reaction, I'd love to see it. That'd be some top-tier payback. Don't worry, Colonel, I replied, a smirk forming. I'll make sure you get that photo. Heck, I might even enlarge it and hang it in the living room. The colonel raised an eyebrow, his tone shifting to one of caution. Do you really think that's the best idea? How do you think Sean would feel about something like that? You're probably right, sir, I admitted, my expression sobering. It just feels like a reminder to me that trust isn't something you should give lightly. He nodded thoughtfully. That's a fair perspective. Anyway, I've got more work waiting for me. You two should head back to your tent and get some rest. Chances are you won't get much downtime in the next few days. I don't know all the specifics of your mission, but Major Kelly made it clear that you two are the best suited for the job. Good luck out there, and make sure you both come back in one piece so we can send you home. Thank you, sir, for everything you've done and all that you're still doing, I said, my voice earnest. I can't tell you how much it means to me. I'm not sure I deserve all this support, but I'm deeply grateful. I know Sean would be too if he understood, Tom added, his tone just as heartfelt. That goes for me too, Colonel. Bill's like a brother to me. What he feels, I feel. We've got each other's backs, no matter what. The Colonel leaned back in his chair, a small smile playing on his lips. You two have a rare bond. I wonder what will happen when your careers take you in different directions after your tours. We've talked about it, Tom said, shrugging lightly. We're friends for life, no matter where we end up. Maybe one day when we retire, we'll settle down in the same area. Or maybe not. Who knows? My dad has friends all over the world. They stay in touch regularly, some of them every day, thanks to the internet, he says. It keeps him grounded. The Colonel chuckled. Your dad sounds like a wise man. I might take that advice myself and reconnect with some of my old friends. Thanks for the idea. Now go rest up. I'll handle things here, and Walter will keep everything moving back home. Focus on your mission and come back safe. Thanks again, sir, I said, standing to leave. I'll see you soon. Same here, sir, Tom said. It means a lot that you're here for my brother. That's why we're here, Tom, to support those who serve. As we stepped out of the office and into the reception area, I paused and turned to Sergeant Restor. We're heading out for a few days on assignment, but when we're back, I know Tom will want to see Amy. As for me, well, I'd like to spend some time with you. Nothing too serious, just to get to know you better. She smiled warmly. I'd like that. I'm not tied down right now, and maybe it's time I gave a flyboy a chance. Tom couldn't resist, chiming in with a grin. Oh, so you're done? With ground pounders and jarheads? She laughed, shaking her head. I wouldn't go that far, but I do have a soft spot for a certain flyboy I recently met. Now you two better get going. You've got work to do. Looking forward to it, I said as we walked out the door. Once outside, Tom shot me a sideways glance. Bill, I think we might have just set ourselves up for something we weren't ready for. This might be the time to stop running or run faster. I nodded, smiling wryly. You're not wrong, brother. But right now all I can think about is getting some sleep. 5 days later, we returned from the mission, stepping off the helicopter, feeling oddly serene. We'd taken out 8 confirmed targets and possibly 4 more during the operation. Our objective was a hidden cave in the mountains near Daria. Insurgents had been using it as a supply depot, covering the entrance with a camouflage tarp. They'd drive into the cave at dawn and wait until nightfall to continue their movements. Using infrared, we tracked a convoy of 5 trucks and about a dozen men moving through a valley toward the suspected location. By daylight, we identified what looked like a rock shifting in the breeze, which turned out to be a tarp concealing the cave entrance. We waited until nightfall to strike. The Marines later confirmed 12 insurgents liquidated and discovered a significant stockpile of weapons, food and sleeping quarters inside. The cave was clearly a major hub for their operations. After securing the documents, they demolished the cave and all its contents. When we returned to base, Tom and I felt surprisingly calm, as though a weight had been lifted. He scheduled a meeting with Colonel Lane to discuss the next steps. During the meeting, he handed me my flight orders along with a set of detailed instructions. When you land stateside, contact Major Kenneth Riley at this number, he said, passing me a small note. He'll handle your transfer to Patrick Air Force Base. Your first flight will take you to Atlanta, then to Fort Stewart for the final leg. Once you arrive at Patrick, call Walter Gronblatt. He's arranged for the process server to deliver the divorce papers about 15 minutes after you get home. I nodded, weighing my options. Do you think I should call Mary when I land in Atlanta, or just let her be surprised? That's entirely up to you, the colonel replied. Your parents are already in Florida, staying with your in-laws, and they've taken Sean with them. He'll be there until Wednesday. You're scheduled to arrive Monday afternoon, so you should be home by 1400 hours. Do whatever feels right. Thanks for everything, sir, I said, a slight smirk creeping onto my face. And don't worry, I'll make sure to capture her reaction when she gets served. My phone's camera should do the trick. The colonel chuckled. Good luck, Bill. Go pack your gear and prepare for your flight. I hope things work out for you. Thank you. Sir, I said, standing to leave. I'll be back soon. Sean is in good hands for now, and Walter already has all the paperwork finalized. Colonel Lane gave a small nod. That's why we're here, to support those who serve. After leaving his office, I returned to the tent to find Tom waiting with my gear neatly packed. He'd already folded my socks and underwear, packed my extra uniforms, and laid out my toiletries and boots. My dress uniforms were back home, so I only had my battle gear and a few personal items here. We exchanged a quick hug, said goodbye, and I stepped outside to catch my ride to the airstrip. The rumble of a Hummer's engine greeted me as I stepped out of the tent, where a young Army private stood holding the door open. I tossed my duffel bag into the back and climbed inside. From that moment, everything blurred together. By the time I landed in Atlanta, it was 6 a.m. I was quickly escorted to an Army helicopter waiting to take me to Fort Stewart. Once there, I had an hour to kill before boarding AC-130, bound for Patrick Air Force Base in Florida. That's when I decided to call Mary. She answered after a couple of rings. Hello. Hi, Mary, I said. I'm stateside, actually in Georgia right now. I managed to get a flight home and should be there this afternoon. I'll call once I arrive at Patrick. Someone's already lined up to drive me to the house. Bill, you're coming home. Today, she exclaimed, her voice filled with excitement. That's incredible. How did you manage that? Why now? Wow. Just wow. You said this afternoon. Do you know what time? I need to get everything ready. Yeah, this afternoon, I confirmed. Your parents are staying at the house with mine, right? And Sean's with them. She hesitated before responding. Wait a second. Did you plan all this just to surprise me? No, Mary, I said evenly. The only surprise is my visit. The rest is just how it worked out. I'll see you soon. Oh, Bill, she said, her voice softening. I can't wait to see you and hold you again. I love you so much. Bye. Bye. I hung up, barely restraining the frustration boiling beneath the surface. I forced myself to breathe deeply, the way I would if I had a target in my sights. Slowly, I pushed the anger aside and refocused. Next, I called Walter to confirm the details. He assured me everything was ready. Once I landed at Patrick, a courier would pick me up and drive me to the house. When the plane touched down, I stepped onto the tarmac, tired but determined, carrying my half-packed duffel bag. A civilian van labeled Melbourne Courier Service was waiting nearby. Leaning against it was a young man in his mid-20s, tall with dark curly hair and a confident demeanor. He looked more like an off-duty cop than a courier, complete with a sidearm, holstered at his hip. Technical Sergeant Watson, a man called as I approached. That's me, I replied. Are you here for me? Yes, Sergeant, he confirmed. I'm your ride home, and I've also got something for your wife. That delivery will happen exactly 15 minutes after you step inside the house. You're a bit early, though. I wasn't expecting you for another half hour. I got the call while your plane was still an hour out. Let's not waste time, I said firmly. I told Mary I'd be home around 1400 and I just want to get this over with. Understood. Hop in, he said, gesturing to the vehicle. 15 minutes later, I climbed out of the van, duffel bag in hand, just as Mary burst out of the house, screaming my name. Her performance was nauseating. How could she act so thrilled to see me when I knew the truth? Dropping my bag, I let her fling herself into my arms. I kissed and hugged her back, but the tears streaming down my face weren't from joy. They were from sorrow. Inside the house, I played the part of a weary traveler. Honey, I'm parched. Military. Flights don't come with flight attendants or snacks. Honestly, I don't even remember the last time I ate. Mind if we hold off on catching up until I get some food? Of course, baby, she said eagerly. I'll warm up some casserole and grab you a soda. I'm so glad you're home. I settled into the recliner in the living room, refusing to sit at the kitchen table. That table and the bed upstairs were symbols of her betrayal. Both would be gone soon from the kitchen. Mary chattered non-stop as she prepared my food. First, she brought me a soda and perched on my lap, covering me in kisses until the microwave timer beeped. Then she darted off. Returning moments later with a steaming plate of tuna casserole, I'd barely set the plate on the table when the doorbell rang. Must be for me, I said, standing up. I'm expecting some paperwork about when I need to report back. I'll get it. Mary hadn't noticed the courier van parked outside. When I opened the door, the young man handed me a large manila envelope, his face expressionless. Is there a Mrs. Mary Watson here? He asked. Actually, that would be my wife. Mary, this guy's here for you. I called over my shoulder. Were you expecting something? No, she said, walking toward us. I'm Mary Watson. What's this about? This is for you, the courier said, handing her the envelope. You've been served. He turned and quickly walked back to the van. Mary stared at the envelope in confusion. What is this? She asked, opening it. Her eyes scanned the header, and her expression shifted to shock. That's when I snapped the photo I'd been waiting for. She barely had time to process what was happening before her knees buckled, and she fainted. I caught her before she hit the ground, carried her to the couch, and laid her down. Then I calmly returned to my casserole. A few minutes later, she came to, her face contorted with rage. I snapped another picture. What? I said, my tone icy. You thought I wouldn't find out that I just let you cheat on me and get away with it? Bill, it's not what you think, she stammered, tears streaming down her face. It was only once I was lonely. And I didn't mean to hurt you. I love you. I laughed bitterly. Not what I think, Mary. It wasn't once. It was dozens of times with different people. And let's not forget that captain you've been seeing for over a year. Did you really think I wouldn't find out? Her sobs grew louder as I continued. Now pack your bags and get out. You're not staying here. Oh, and before you go, answer me this. Do you even know if Sean is mine or is he someone else's kid? Tell me, Mary, do you even know who his father is? Mary curled up on the couch, her entire body trembling as sobs racked through her. Without a word, I grabbed my truck keys and duffel bag and walked out the door. But I didn't get far. At the end of the street, I broke down, gripping the steering wheel as tears streamed down my face. 10 minutes later, I saw Dick's mother's car turn onto the street heading toward my house. A surge of anger shot through me. I started the truck, turned it around, and drove back. When I walked in, there was Dickie, sitting next to Mary, awkwardly patting her shoulder and murmuring something I couldn't hear. Dickie, get out of my house before I throw you out, I said, my voice low and cold. Haven't you caused enough damage? Already? He stood up and raised his hands defensively. Whoa, man, I'm just here to comfort her. Comfort her. Are you serious? I laughed bitterly. You actually think you're special? She's been with more men than I can count. Some right here in this house. Did she tell you that? Or did she make you believe you were the only one? Dickie's face fell as his gaze darted to Mary. For a moment he stood frozen, then turned and left without another word. The door clicked shut behind him, leaving just the two of us. Mary looked up at me, tears spilling from her eyes. Bill, that was cruel. Why are you being so heartless? We can fix this, right? I stared at her, my voice cold and flat. Our marriage was over the moment you slept with someone else. So tell me, Mary, how long has this been going on? I know about Lieutenant Gregory. That was over a year ago. Does it go further back? She hesitated, her eyes darting away before she spoke in a whisper. Yes, he was the first. When you didn't find out, I thought. I thought I could get away with it. So I did. I scheduled the house cleanings to make time for it. It just happened. Was I not enough for you? I asked, my voice rising with pain. Did I fail as a husband? As a man? No, Bill, she cried, her voice breaking. You were everything. Everything a woman could want. The best husband, the best father. I don't know why I did it the first time. Philip told me I was beautiful, irresistible, and I fell for it. We slept together the first day we met. I hated myself afterward and didn't see him again for months. But then he called, and I caved. After that, it got easier. You didn't seem to notice, so I kept going. It was like an obsession. She paused, her voice trembling. I'm so sorry, Bill. Don't apologize to me, I snapped. Save it for your parents. I'm going to see Sean. You'll stay far away from him. You don't deserve to be in his life. Sign the divorce papers so we can both move on. Yes, she said quietly, retrieving the papers. As she read through them, she gasped a few times, likely at the damning evidence outlined inside. But she didn't argue. After signing the final page, she placed them back in the envelope and disappeared into the bedroom. I sat in the living room staring blankly at the tuna casserole she'd left on the table. My soda was still cold, but I couldn't bring myself to drink it. Eventually, Mary returned carrying her car keys. She began hauling her belongings to the car, making several trips in silence. Finally, she came back one last time and knelt at my feet. Bill, she said, her voice cracking. I've hurt you more than I ever thought possible. I'll never forgive myself for what I've done to our family. I love you. I always have. But I don't. I serve you. Please just tell Sean I'm sorry. Maybe it's better if he thinks I'm gone for good. I won't contest the divorce, and I don't want anything more from you. What you've offered is more than fair. If you find anything of mine, call Susie or throw it out. I won't bother you again. She paused, her voice barely audible. Goodbye, Bill. I'll always love you. She leaned forward, hugged me, and kissed my forehead before walking out the door. I sat there, unmoving, listening to the faint sound of her car engine fading into the distance. The next morning, I finally stirred. I went to the bathroom, then returned to the living room and started making calls. First, I contacted the courier service to pick up the signed papers. Then I called Misty at the Wilson home to explain what had happened. She was upset that I hadn't confided in her earlier, but said she understood. Mary hadn't reached out yet, but Misty expected to hear from her soon. Next, I called my parents asking if they could take Sean to Disney World for a few days. They were thrilled with the idea and mentioned that Sam and Misty planned to join them later in the week. It would give Mary time to contact her own parents and tell her side of the story. Her side. What could she possibly say to justify a year of betrayal with multiple men and at least one woman? I shook my head and moved on to the next task. I updated Walter, letting him know the papers were signed and on their way. I asked him to prepare custody documents for Sean, giving the Wilsons temporary guardianship while I was deployed. Since I wouldn't need base housing anymore, I made arrangements for my cleaning service to pack up my belongings and store them. I knew the military wouldn't let the house sit empty for long. After combing through Mary's laptop, I discovered a few damning photos attached to her emails. I transferred them to a flash drive to hand over to Walter when the courier arrived. The rest of the laptop's contents were strictly business-related, so I called Susie and let her know she could pick it up any time. I told her I'd cleared off all the company files. When I asked if she had any idea what Mary had been up to, she swore she didn't and offered to let Mary stay with her for a few days until she found another place. Next, I called Marie Sterling to see if she and Michelle Rossi could help keep the business running in Mary's absence. Marie answered quickly, her voice filled with concern and sympathy. Bill, I had no idea until Don told me last week, she said. I always thought you and Mary were solid. I guess you never really know what's going on behind closed doors. Don and I are here for you, whatever you need. Thanks, Marie, I replied, grateful for her support. It's been a lot to process all at once. Mary didn't even try to deny it. At first, she admitted to just one affair, but the truth goes way deeper than that. And then, of all people, Dick's mothers showed up at the house to comfort her. He thought he was the only one. Let's just say he left quickly after finding out otherwise. Marie let out a heavy sigh. What about Sean? Do you have a plan for him? For now, he's staying with his grandparents, I explained. I'll be gone for another year, so they'll have temporary custody until I'm back. As for Mary, I've made it clear she's not to be involved. Sean doesn't need to be around that kind of instability. For now, I'll tell him something age-appropriate. Maybe that she had to go away. When he's older, I'll figure out how to explain the full truth. Marie's tone softened. Bill, why don't you come over for dinner tonight? Bring your desktop and any business paperwork you have. Michelle and I will help you sort it all out and make sure the company stays on track. And honestly, you shouldn't. Stay in that house. It's full of memories you don't need right now. Stay here tonight. You're not alone in this. All right, I'll come by. I agreed. You're right. It's hard being in that house. Maybe you and Michelle could take a look at the fridge and pantry while I'm gone. Take whatever you want and I'll get rid of the rest. I'm also planning to see about getting a spot in the Bachelor Airman's quarters until I can figure things out. Marie, you and Don have been lifesavers. That's what friends are for, she said warmly. You do the same for us. And no more thanky. You's all right. Just let us help. Oh, and bring some beer if you have any. Don's been having a rough week, too. This whole thing hit him hard. He wasn't sure whether to tell you right away after walking in on Mary, but I insisted he call the next day. You needed to know. I get it, Marie. I'll explain everything tonight. Tom's been a rock for me through all this, too. He, Don, and I are like brothers. It's been a team effort to keep me standing. Good, she said with a smile in her voice. We'll see you tonight. Promise. Yes, Mom, I replied, chuckling. Marie always had a way of lightening the mood with her motherly demeanor. That night, I brought everything over to Marie's between her and Michelle. They took control of the business while I focused on putting my life back together. Sean stayed with his grandparents for the next year while I finished my deployment. When I returned, I had started dating Lillian, who had decided that maybe flyboys weren't so bad after all. Her enlistment is up soon, and she plans to move back here once her time at Fort Hood is over. Sean adores her. He took to her right away. Sometimes when he's tired or cranky, he'll say, I miss Mommy, but she was bad and had to leave. He's only 4, but he's sharp as a tack. Misty enrolled him in a pre-K program, and he's already reading, writing in print and cursive and counting to 100. Misty jokes he'll outsmart me in no time, and honestly, I wouldn't doubt it. Everyone, Sam, Misty. My parents, Don, Marie, Tom, Colonel Lane, and especially Lillian, played a role in helping me heal. Walter also made the legal process far less overwhelming, from drafting the divorce and custody papers to walking me through the hearing. He handled it all seamlessly. Mary showed up at the hearing with her lawyer. She's now living in Orlando and working a steady job. Her mom gave her an earful when she first returned home, but things between them seemed to be improving. Therapy was a condition of the divorce, and according to her mom, Mary has no interest in dating. She's finally come to terms with the damage she caused. As for me, I'm moving forward. Lillian and I are engaged now, and we're planning to get married once she's out of the military. Sean has been my biggest source of strength, often climbing into my lap to hug me and say, "It'll get better, Daddy." And he's right. It already is. I'm still working as an avionics technician with the launch group, and I'm set to get new stripes this fall. Rumors are swirling about possible transfers out west to places like Barksdale or Dias, but wherever I go, my family will come with me. Tom has returned to McGuire, and Amy has a few months left on her rotation. There's talk of her coming home early, but nothing is confirmed yet. She plans to leave the military when her enlistment ends next year. Funny enough, Tom and I both proposed to Lillian and Amy on the same night. Life may have thrown us some hard punches, but we're both standing tall, ready for whatever comes next.